So I wouldn't go too much on the case for electrification and alternative fuel in a broader sense, since I think the case we have, the previous speaker has already mentioned quite a few elements. I will of course mention a little bit on the broader aspects of alternative fuels in general and come to electrification just after. But as mentioned, of course, the security and diversification of our supply in Europe is an important element of the package and the communication which has been issued last week. But there's also, of course, other elements. The oil bill on the general budget of the EU is actually enormous, and it's also directly affecting our citizens with I think about 7% of the house expenditure being spent on fuel. We are paying in all over Europe now about €1 billion per day in oil for our import bill. So that's important element which are mainly driving our action for alternative fuels. But it's not the only one, of course, and we had the white paper that set, white paper on transport that set our objectives, and clearly the contribution of transport in the carbon emission is big, and we have the main objective on decarbonizing our transport system, and this package will focus on the possibilities that are available today and future possibilities in alternative fuel on how to decarbonize. We are not looking at decarbonizing or having zero emission for transport, but looking at a 60% reduction by 2050, which is enormous when we see the previous data before, when we are relying on oil for more than 50% in the transport system. It's also an issue on competitiveness and growth and jobs. We are talking today about a package of measure where actually the European industries are strong, and there's new market opportunities not only in Europe but also in third countries, where the fourth coming player there are definitely China and the US, especially when we're talking about electrification, but not only. So there it's also important to support our industry and to make sure that the right framework is there in order to be competitive outside Europe. This is a slide that Vice President Kallas likes very much, and which drives very much his position in coming with this package on alternative fuel. Not only the price of oil is increasing, but we are extremely bound by the speculation of oil, and the cost of this speculation is enormous, especially in time of crisis. But also today there's still a speculation which makes the price going up and up. And even if the trend sometimes goes down, in general the whole oil price is going up and is not foreseen to go down. So as I mentioned on the white paper for transport, but not only, also the low carbon economy roadmap which came at about the same period from the climate services and Mrs. Edegaard. Greenhouse gas emission reduction for transport is the main driver for alternative fuel strategy. We are looking at 60%, but there are different ways of going to this 60%. Of course, the first, and we are fully in line with this goal, is to ensure that the way vehicles are today are becoming more efficient, and clearly the legislation on CO2s in cars have participated to this, and also brought the case of electrification more seriously into the picture for manufacturers and our industry. So it's extremely important that we fully support the way it's been implemented for the time being and how it will be implemented in the future. But after 2030, we also saw that there will be very limited possibilities of continuing this further increase of energy efficiency performance of vehicles. And that's where the alternative fuel side comes in the picture, and we need to be ready from now in order to already and to ensure that the right framework is in place after 2030 for alternative fuels and propulsion systems. But there's also other elements where the electrification in particular, but also the alternative fuels in general, are extremely important, is for pollution, and air pollution is one of the main issues that will be on the table this year with the revision of the air quality legislation. So there we are also we've set ourselves quite clear targets in the white paper. For transport, with halving the use of conventional cars in cities by half in 2030, and by 100% by 2050. So that's quite forward-looking. Imagine our cities by 2050 with no cars propelled by oil. And that's where we also need to have our framework in place. Then why don't we just focus on electrification of the transport system? Because there's different modes, there's different segments, and electrification is definitely the one that is working in the urban context, or the short and medium segment for passenger transport in the urban framework, but not only, and I'm sure you will have quite a lot of presentation during the morning about how trucks could also benefit from electricity. But our case was, for this alternative fuel package, was built around this diagram. What is the most viable at the moment? What is the most mature for each sectors? And that's where we have definitely some choice to make, and the choice was made for maritime, for example, where we clearly go for LNG, but also for the longer segment in the truck sector. We see that biofuel goes all the way long, and definitely is a way to look in the future. But we also know the difficulties with biofuel at the moment. There's lack of availability, and also of the biofuels that are the most sustainable. So that's of course one of the preferred options, but we need to have much more commercial application of second and third generation before being certain that we can move forward. And yep. So the Clean Transport Initiative. That's, I think, the answer on how we can actually, through legislation, influence and push the market. It's clearly a package that is ambitious, but also is very much aligned to what is actually going on in the member states and through the industry. So we wanted to give a push. The communication is turned towards several alternative fuels and make the case of all the alternative fuel, as mentioned, taking on from the white paper. The directive is a very different piece, and focus on infrastructure only and standards. So why do we actually, then we also had a staff working document on a very specific issue with shipping, but that's not for the subject of today.